Thank you very much, colleagues. Our next item is topical questions, and our first question is from Daniel Johnson.
Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Government what preparations and provisions it is making in response to the coronavirus outbreak in China.
Cabinet Secretary Jean Freeman.
We have made the following preparations and provisions in response to the coronavirus outbreak in China. Before I outline those, it is important for us to note that to date we've no positive cases identified in the UK, and the risk to the population continues to be assessed as low. In terms of our preparations, we have activated our health resilience preparations, including a dedicated incident management team. Our Chief Medical Officer has Chief CMO level calls with all the other Chief Medical Officers across the UK to ensure that there is a coordinated response and an emerging understanding on the nature of the virus, its properties and how we might anticipate its spread and its impact. There are also daily calls between my officials and the rest of the UK, and on Friday I participated in a COBRA call with the Secretary of State for Health and ministers from both Wales and Northern Ireland to ensure that we had an agreed coordinated response in terms of who was in the lead for which areas, bearing in mind, of course, that health is devolved in Scotland. In addition, we are inside the Scottish Government ensuring that other ministerial portfolios that may have a relevance here or an interest are continue to be advised as we make progress.
Daniel Johnson.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response. Scotland enjoys many international visitors and international students in Edinburgh in particular. Can I ask what particular considerations are being given to the increased probability of cases that this may bring, and what steps are being taken in response to that fact?
Cabinet Secretary.
So at a Scottish level, in terms of which replicates really the work that is being done elsewhere across the UK, guidance has been issued to clinicians in both primary and secondary care. Additional guidance is being worked through with Universities Scotland and Colleges Scotland and with our local authority partners in terms of public health officers. At a UK level, as flights enter the UK, where they do from this particular province of China, there is a protocol that has been agreed and followed, which includes information to passengers on that flight. That has now been extended to information to passengers on all flights entering the UK from China, which includes what to do if they feel that they have any of the symptoms that may be associated with this virus. Of course, the part of the issue here is that some of those symptoms could be associated with normal flu or simply a respiratory infection that is not connected to this virus. But nonetheless, where individuals have those symptoms and have been in contact in that province, then they are encouraged to come forward to their local health provision in order to be checked. There is a triage process in terms of our clinicians when those symptoms present, for them to determine on the basis of that whether or not they believe the further specific test for coronavirus should then be undertaken. That's the instances that we're talking about when we say tests have been completed and to date there is no confirmed case of coronavirus in the UK.
Daniel Johnson.
Again, I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that clarification, and I'm sure she'll agree with me that it's important that we take a measured and considered response to this. And I note her echoing of the advice from the UK Health Secretary for those who have returned from Wuhan. But are there any particular considerations, measures or steps that the Scottish Government is advising the general population to take at this time?
Cabinet Secretary.
There's nothing specific in terms of the general population at this time. There is an emerging work undergoing that people are undertaking in terms of experienced clinicians and epidemiologists and so on to understand the nature of this virus and the way in which it is transmitted, and to understand whether or not, if someone can be infected but display no symptoms, what might be the situation in those circumstances. Part of what we have agreed at a UK level is the various stages that may be triggered in terms of our response, should there be a confirmed case, or should further data emerge from the scientists and clinicians who are working on this with the data that comes from China that should advise us of additional preparations. But the overall advice to citizens in Scotland who have not been in that province of China is that where you have a respiratory infection, you should present yourself to your GP in normal course for that to be looked at and determined whether or not there is further treatment that you need. And of course, my advice always is to all of those who are eligible for flu vaccination, please to take that vaccination up. It's not too late. At this point in January, it's still effective, and I would urge everyone who is eligible to do that to do so as soon as they can.
And we have 3 further questions. I'll try and get them all. Miles Briggs, be followed by Emma Harper.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I reiterate what the Cabinet Secretary just said there, because I think there is concern, especially in Scotland, with people with multiple conditions and the importance of that. But specifically, to go back to the point which was raised earlier, we'll know with Chinese New Year there will be a lot of movement of Chinese students. And specifically, yesterday, Matt Hancock outlined that students should look to self-isolate for 2 weeks, even with no symptoms. Is that the Scottish Government's position, and what conversations are taking place with universities here in Scotland, given the difficulties that might cause?
Cabinet Secretary.
So Mr Briggs is quite right that in terms of people who have had no contact with the province in China and so on, but who do have multiple conditions, then the guidance would always be, in any circumstance, if you are experiencing any respiratory problems or fatigue or anything out of the ordinary, then you should, of course, seek clinical assessment and guidance in those circumstances. And equally, Mr Johnson and Mr Briggs are both right that our response to this should be measured, considered and proportionate. In terms of Chinese students, as you say quite rightly, who may, because of Chinese New Year, have been looking to go home to their families or now be returning, the advice that we are giving and discussing through with Universities Scotland and Colleges Scotland is comparable to the advice that if you have returned from that province in China, or you've been in contact with people who have been in that province in China, and you experience any of these symptoms, you should immediately seek clinical advice and help to determine whether or not is appropriate in your case that the particular test for coronavirus is then undertaken. And as I've said, there's that second important clinical step, which is the triaging of those symptoms, because the symptoms themselves so often are present in other conditions. In addition, universities are considering what more support and guidance they can offer their students. We have repeated the UK guidance in terms of self-isolation, and the period of 2 weeks, 14 days, is the best advice that we've been given at UK level in terms of the incubation period for this particular virus. But of course, as I've said, these are fluid matters, and this is a new virus in many respects. So we will continue to update the guidance as that information comes forward.
Emma Harper, to be followed by Alex Cole-Hampton.
Thank you. The Cabinet Secretary mentioned that people that haven't yet had a flu shot should seek it if they are qualified for it. So can the Cabinet Secretary just reiterate the importance of having the flu shot, because the symptoms for coronavirus are the same for flu, and it might at least allay some worries for people who think they have coronavirus?
Cabinet Secretary.
Certainly there is no reason to think that you might have contracted the virus if you have not had any contact with, if you've not been in that province in China at this point, or you've not had contact with those who may have come from that province on business or visiting and so on. But nonetheless, the flu vaccine overall for our population, particularly those who are vulnerable, both children and those with other relevant conditions and those older citizens, is really important. It's important for a whole number of reasons, for the individual's own health and for the general health of the population. So I would encourage anyone who is eligible, who has not had the flu vaccination, to contact their primary care provider and see if they can make early arrangements to have that. What I am pleased to report is that just yesterday I received information that in terms of our healthcare workforce, the level of vaccination is increased over the past year, and we're not yet finished in that regard yet.
Alex Cole-Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. One of the principal concerns voiced by the considerable number of British citizens living in Wuhan City and Hubei Province is their inability to leave it. What is the discussions that the Cabinet Secretary has had with the UK Government, either about the repatriation of Scottish citizens or indeed their safe transit out of the area?
Cabinet Secretary.
So my understanding as of today is that the UK is making arrangements today to ensure that a plane goes to the province and that British citizens who want to return home, that aircraft will have a health team on board it, and that those British citizens who want to come home will be assisted to do so. We have asked the Foreign and Commonwealth Office to advise us if there are any Scottish domiciled individuals who will board that plane, and I'm confident that they will let us have that information as soon as they do know it, and we will be able to make appropriate arrangements for those people.
Thank you very much. Question 2, Stuart Stevenson.
To ask the Scottish Government how a new Scottish visa could address depopulation and skills shortages.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
Scotland has distinct demographic and geographical needs, and it is clear that the current immigration system is not meeting the needs of our communities and employers. Countries such as Canada and Australia have successfully used regional migration schemes to attract and retain people with the skills needed to benefit local communities. A Scottish visa would allow Scottish ministers accountable to the Scottish Parliament to develop a tailored policy within the UK immigration system to meet the needs of Scotland. Our proposals for a tailored migration policy are supported by local authorities, employers and universities across Scotland. The UK Government should engage positively and work with us to develop a system which meets our distinct needs.
Stuart Stevenson.
Is the Cabinet Secretary aware that some 70% of people employed in the north east of Scotland, the fish processing industry, are non-UK nationals? With vacancies already rising, how would a Scotland-specific scheme assist this vital industry, which is worth some £650 million a year to the Scottish economy?
Cabinet Secretary.
Stuart Stevenson raises an absolutely critical point to the success and the future success of that sector. The policy proposals for a Scottish visa are designed to be inherently flexible to meet Scotland's varied labour needs, and we want to consult with industry and employers to develop that Scottish visa to meet those needs. Similarly, we've made the case for a place-based route for migration to rural areas, and today the Migration Advisory Committee from the UK have again recommended a pilot of a visa that could cater for industries in rural areas such as fishing, the fish processing industry to the north east. So we want to work with them. We're also planning to commission the expert advisory group, the independent expert advisory group on migration and policy, to begin research into the specifics of rural pilots and the operation of a place-based immigration route.
Stuart Stevenson.
Has the Scottish Government looked at the experience of the devolved government in Alberta, Canada, who through their immigrant nominee programme has a local scheme that operates within the countrywide immigration scheme, delivering different immigration criteria and benefits that that Canadian province derives from having its own scheme?
Cabinet Secretary.
Indeed, if people have not had the opportunity to read the paper that was launched yesterday on migration from the Scottish Government with the proposal for the Scottish visa, contained in that is an analysis of a number of different countries who have such a scheme. Canada being one of them, page 78 to 80 sets out the proposals and how they work in other countries. Interestingly, in Alberta, the retention rates are as high as 82% after 5 to 8 years of residence. So the paper that we put forward provides international examples of how this works in other countries. It's perfectly possible, it's perfectly reasonable. All we're asking is for a reasonable response from the UK Government to take it forward.
Now, there's a huge amount of interest. There are 6 members who wish to ask supplementaries, but I'm afraid we won't have time for them all. But we'll start with Donald Cameron, followed by Claire Baker.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Conservatives believe in a UK-wide immigration system, but one that also works for Scotland, which is why we previously argued for a system which reflects the need of places which need migration, in particular remote and rural communities and sectors reliant on migrant labour and where there is no domestic workforce available. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with the Scottish Government's 2014 White Paper on Independence that a points-based system is one of the best mechanisms to achieve this?
Cabinet Secretary.
If the member has had the opportunity to read the paper, he might not have had a chance to read the paper launched yesterday about prosperity for Scotland and how it can achieve through migration, then a points-based system is internationally recognised as a way forward. That's what's in our paper in terms of our proposals, if he takes the opportunity to read that. And interestingly, the MAC proposals that have just come out today don't contradict the Scottish Government at all in what we're proposing. They also recognise the importance of having that flexibility to have a regional approach. We think that the issues for Scotland are not just on a sectoral basis, but they're also on a national basis. Our population issues are quite different. If there was to be a 50% reduction of EU migrants coming to this country, as was perhaps proposed in some of the previous debates by the UK government, that would see a working age increase for the UK of 4.9% over the next 25 years, but a reduction for Scotland of 1.9%. So yes, we want to support rural and remote areas. 14 of our local authorities are facing depopulation. So although, yes, we want to have pilots in distinct geographical areas within Scotland, this is an all-Scotland issue that needs an all-Scotland solution.
Claire Baker, to be followed by Ruth McGuire.
Thank you. I do welcome publication of the report, and it was a very disappointing response from the Conservative Government, because while I support immigration being reserved, I believe there is room for flexibility that is workable within the current system. The Scottish Government, in their statement yesterday, does recognise the importance of reaching agreement with the UK Government on the need for a tailored policy. So how does the Scottish Government plan to go about this in terms of future steps, and is there room for the Parliament to have a greater involvement in those discussions?
Cabinet Secretary.
I'm very keen for Parliament cross-party to engage in this issue and continue the positive engagement we've had so far, and also with the wider sector. I mean, so many of our businesses are small businesses, and Andrew McRae, the Scotland Policy Chair of the FSB, yesterday said the new paper from the Scottish Government is a timely and evidence-based intervention. It sets out a pathway towards a UK system that can flex for Scotland's distinct demographic and economic needs without creating additional burdens for smaller businesses. And the UK Government should acknowledge that it's possible and desirable to enable its immigration system to respond to different regions and nations, as well as maintain strict border controls and a user-friendly system. Now, I don't think there's anybody in this chamber that would disagree with those statements. The problem is the UK Government yesterday, just in a knee-jerk response, dismissed this. Now, I am urging them strongly to rethink the position. The response was, oh, the immigration system will remain a reserved matter. The proposals in this paper is within a UK system. Now, ideally, we'd want freedom of movement to maintain. This is a proposal that is very practical. It's an additional system that would allow flexibility in Scotland. So we will persist, and the more support we have from other parties, cross-party perhaps, in debate and motion in this chamber, I think we can try and engage the UK Government, because what we're proposing here is something that has widespread support. We in Scotland will be best placed, I think, to help implement pilots in some of these areas, and I think the solution is one which we should really pursue on a cross-party basis, and I thank Claire Baker for her interest today.
Ruth McGuire, to be followed by Kenny Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The UK Government's own Migration Advisory Committee has acknowledged the need for regional variation, with their recommendation for rural pilot schemes. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree Scotland should host these pilots to help ensure our rural areas can benefit from changes and not be further damaged by the Tories' hostile immigration environment?
Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, indeed, and I think the Migration Advisory Committee has taken evidence from us, which they have now responded to, that is something that should happen in terms of rural pilots. I've met with a number of leaders of local authorities in Scotland, very keen and willing and able to take forward those pilots. I've mentioned previously that we will commission the Scottish Government's independent expert advisory group on migration and population to look at the best examples of that, of taking that forward. But we do need something that's very flexible to meet the needs of Scotland, and that is what we will continue to pursue.
Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, President
So the Scottish Government's proposals have been welcomed across the board by business organisations, universities and industry bodies, and even former Tory MP Stephen Kerr supports them. The UK Government has dismissed it in record time. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that this ill-informed response simply demonstrates that the UK Government is out of touch with the needs of the Scottish people and the Scottish economy?
Cabinet Secretary.
I thought the response was deeply regrettable. I think it was knee-jerk and I think it was perhaps without reflection and certainly without consideration of the content in the report. So to be generous, I do want to give the UK time to have consideration and study of the actual proposals within this and to continue to engage with it. But there's actually a very serious warning here. If the UK can't engage on something that is as reasonable as a flexible system that has the support from different organisations, industries, universities, trade unions and other sectors within Scotland, then how on earth can anybody think they can be responsive to Scotland ever in their approach? This is something that we've set forward in good faith. It is practical, it is doable. It's actually been supported in many respects by what has come out of the Migration Advisory Committee before. But I think the political writing is on the wall. Let's try and be as practical as possible in serving the people of Scotland. But if the UK Government does not respond positively in this, it is of their own making.